Welcome back to the Seven Figure Flipping Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Whitney, and I have amazing guests today. Friends of mine, people who help me in my business, Will Morgan and Sam from Auxilee Bookkeeping Services. But before they were a bookkeeping company, Will, who still is an investor today, was a prolific house flipper in California, and he saw a need in the marketplace and thus was born Auxley, who I personally use in my real estate investing business and in my title company that I own. So I'm obviously a huge fan. Will, Sam, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Okay, Will, we'll start with you. Talk to us a little bit about how you got started in real estate and take us through the journey about how Auxley was born.
Okay. So, I come from 28 years in the nuclear industry, and I used to buy a house and fix it about once a year, kind of as a hobby. And then in 2016, I put a large focus on scaling. Joined Seven Figure Flipping, learned how to turn a hobby into a business. And, we scaled rapidly. And we ended up outgrowing our, bookkeeper after only a couple of years, and our CPA as well. So, we actually had to bring in a lot of talented staff to fix our books. One of my biggest frustrations as a business owner is I couldn't see how my business was doing in real time, right? I couldn't see how I was doing on a project, right? We estimate a project for a certain budget. Well, how are we today on that project? I could never see that. It was very frustrating. And so we brought in, talent to help us give us financial clarity. And after we were done fixing our books and aligning our organization with our finances, we found this was a need for a lot of people. And we started, that was the birth of Auxley, essentially. We started offering those services to others.
It's such an interesting concept because, we're hyper-focused as real estate investors who are building a business on key performance indicators and metrics and all these different things that are number-based that equate to your business. But we oftentimes don't look at our books. We don't know if we're profitable. We're not looking at the metrics that matter because we don't know how to organize the data. Or if you're flipping houses and you have 10 million receipts because you're doing tons of construction, it becomes really, really problematic. And we know from being in the industry for a long time, there's a lot of house flippers who are broke. They don't know where their money is, but when you really dig into it, they actually have tons of equity. There's a lot of money available to them. They just don't know how to extract it out of their business. So as you saw this need for Auxley, you guys had built this internal staff that you were able to scale up. Talk to me about what Auxley does and who Auxley is for specifically.
Okay. So our philosophy is to bring talented people, business systems, and technology to bear for our clients. Now, in the bookkeeping realm, it's very helpful because I liken it to the instrument panel, on a pilot's dashboard. You mentioned that most business owners don't really have the time to allocate to really dig into their finances. We know we have to do it, right? We know we should be looking at our numbers daily and weekly just to see where we're at. But as a business owner, you often don't have time because you're putting out fires, you're trying to get new business, you're handling difficulties with within your business. When we engage with a client, we try to give them that clarity. We've been down that road, and we know, how to organize their finances, how to, set up your book so that gives you that vision, it gives you that dashboard, and it shows you what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong.
Yeah, no doubt about it. the just having that instrument panel with Auxley is extremely helpful for us. So for either of you guys, let's talk about some nuance to the investor P&L and some of the stuff that they should know about it. Well, first off, let's start with what mistakes do you most commonly see investors, particularly house flippers, make with their P&Ls?
I'm reluctant to refer to it as a mistake because we're all at different portions in our growth journey. But what we often see is clients will have only one bank account, or they'll have multiple entities into their QuickBooks, or they will not have their financial data divided up amongst the various projects that they're performing. So I like to refer to it as one big pile. Their business is one big pile of financial data rather than segregating it off into manageable and sections, buckets, I guess you would call it. And that's the most common thing that we see with business owners, and that's what we help them get out of, graduate to the next level.
What what is the Sam, did you want to answer that?
Yeah, so again, I work with over 100 companies. Most of them are into flipping and wholesaling, and a lot of real estate investors, commercial, residential. And I think there are, most commonly, I see a lot of mistakes, but one of them is mixing personal funds with business funds. So whether it's almost 90% of them do that to some extent. It's hard to do, but again, that's something I see going on. And then another thing I usually notice is misclassification of transactions, because in this business there is a lot of lending, private loan, right, loans, notes payables, and all that stuff. They don't have a proper record maintained, because I've seen books where the people get a loan or private money, and that's not even classified right into the books as a liability. It's entered as, in the P&L section as a income, right? That's a huge blunder. I see that all the time. And another mistake, which is uh, linked to the same issue, is not knowing what's their expense versus I think, in other words, what's a balance sheet and P&L item. Like, for example, sometimes there is interest only loan, and then there is sometimes bank mortgage, which is principal and interest, right? It's surprising to see most of the time that again, I'm just telling the numbers based on what I see working with over 100 companies, is almost 50% of the time I don't see they split the principal and interest part, right? Because the interest is something which you can expense it in the business, and that has some right, it reduces your tax liability if you expense it, but I don't see that happening. And a lot of time, I think, I can keep go on and on, but most of the time what I see is business owners are not ready to look into their books in the first place. They don't get time, right? I think that's another thing. But when they actually spend time to look at it, it's fascinating to see how they take decisions, right? So sometimes, I do a monthly meeting with the clients and I show them the numbers. They'd be like, "Oh, this is incorrect. Like, am I spending this much in my overheads? I'm paying this much amount in interest and all." So then they say, "Oh, that number doesn't look right." Then we go back and check, then it's right. And then okay, I need to make these changes, like I need to reduce my overhead or do. So I enjoy doing that, because literally it's them who's taking the decision by looking at the books. I'm just providing them the visibility with the right books.
Yeah,
So
there's a couple things to dive into here because this is a pet peeve that I have. Number one is if you're gonna, so you work with a bookkeeper because they're professionals and you're not. Your books are a mess or you don't even have them, so you hire a bookkeeper. Then you dump it on the bookkeeper and you never go in there, you never update it. I think people don't understand that when you have a bookkeeper, you still have to help them to classify things. You still have to you have to give them data and information in order for them to create accuracy in
Mhm.
your books. So it's like anything else, garbage in, you get garbage out. And then I'll
Right.
see people go, well, my bookkeeper is not any good. It's like, well, is your bookkeeper not good? Or are you not giving your bookkeeper the appropriate information to have accurate data for you to make decisions off of? So, like, that's number one, in my opinion. For anybody out there who's thinking about hiring a bookkeeper, there is some front end work that happens, and you do need to be actively involved in it. They will take 80 to 90% of the lift off you, but if you don't do that 10 to 20%, that will be garbage in and you will get garbage out. So I think that's a critical distinction when you talk about bringing on a bookkeeper. The other point that is so interesting, Sam, you're at the pointy end of the spear, as we say in the military, meaning you're in these books, you're talking to these business owners, you're seeing all of this stuff. So these are common mistakes. These aren't all the mistakes. I'm curious because so many people ask, like, literally, was that flip profitable? And they can't
Mhm.
answer it, or they give inaccurate numbers. And then when you think about us in the real estate space, there's a lot of coaching programs and gurus and people like, I made $10 million. It's like, did you make $10 million? Let's define that. So can you demystify gross profit versus net profit and how that's different from a wholesaling business primarily to a flipping business? Because I feel like those numbers can create a lot of marketing inflation that happens on
Sure.
social media.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point because even within real estate, right? So the way you organize the chart of accounts for wholesale business versus a flipping business is completely different, right? To get the big picture. So wholesaling business, it's mostly you have a wholesale. I say wholesaling business, it's a little easier and straightforward compared to the flipping business, because usually if you look at the P&L, you have two elements like income and then expenses, right? In wholesaling, it's a straightforward marketing expenses, right? And your operations which you run to generate income, and then if you sell, you have a wholesale income. And after the wholesale income, any marketing expenses, so whatever income you get from the contract, that's assignment income, so that's your gross profit, right? And then after gross profit, anything minus operation is what your net is in general. But with flipping, so you have your cost of goods sold. This is where most of the error happens. So you might make $1 million in a deal, but your net could be just $5,000. It could be negative after paying all the commissions and brokerage and cost of marketing and all that stuff. So which we need to account when we do the books. So in flipping, you have your final sale price, I mean, in general, and then you need to also account your cost of goods sold, which includes your purchase price, closing costs, any cost associated with repairs, right, making the
Yeah, the
property
whole
ready,
rehab.
and yeah, rehab. And then when you so all of these would be cost of goods sold. And when you, from the sale price, when you minus all the cost of goods sold, it's your gross profit. It's still not your net, right? It's still
Yeah.
your gross profit. Then from there, you deduct all your operating costs, like the salesperson, commission, marketing, and then it's what you get your net. But usually, what we do is for a flipping business, it's more like a project base. So we need to keep track of each project in QuickBooks using classes or something, so that we can get a project-wise profitability, which is really important. Because when you look at the P&L from a business, that's different than when you look at the P&L as a project.
Yeah, that's okay. So for everybody listening, income comes into your business. Then from that income, the first thing, so this is gross, this is just pure gross revenue. Money comes in, then you have cost of goods sold, also known as COGS. The COGS come out of that income, and you have gross profit. And underneath that gross profit, you have the rest of your operational expenses, the money it costs to keep the lights on and run the business. Once you subtract all of those things, then we can have a real conversation and start talking about net profit. And I think a lot of people don't like that concept to people is a bit foreign. Obviously, for wholesalers, very little COGS, very little cost of goods sold. It's mostly just income minus expenses by and large. But for the house flippers, they have massive cost of goods sold, sometimes millions and millions of dollars of rehab happening annually. And then plus they have the operational expenses to run their business. And, you know, it sounds simple, but getting it organized, if you're doing your books yourself, like getting it organized in your QuickBooks so that you have clear and actionable data to make decisions from is a real challenge. In fact, I personally have come to the conclusion that one of the first things you should hire out is your bookkeeping. I didn't say you shouldn't pay attention to your finances. I just said you should hire out your bookkeeping so that you're making really sound decisions based on good, accurate data. Will, would you agree with that?
I 100% agree, because when, I remember it distinctly, you consider your bookkeeper as someone that helps you organize your information for your CPA to file your taxes. That was the concept I had in the beginning. But that same data, that same business data, can be used in your business to tell you where the inefficiencies are, or what you're doing well. For example, is your return on marketing 5x? You have no idea what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. And I understand it as a new business owner, we're just trying to put meat on the table. We're just trying to go out there and get more deals, and we'll let the rest sort it out. But yes, it's important to know what's working and what's not working. And it all starts with you're organizing your business data through bookkeeping.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that's important. All right, so if they're a new investor, at what point in the business should an investor stop doing their own books and bring on a bookkeeper, in your opinion?
I would say when your business stops looking like a hobby, and when you want it to be a business, it's not only important for you to pilot your own plane, but it's important if you're going to go out there and get financing, right? If you're going to eventually, try to structure the business so it can be sold, anything like that. But it all starts with good books, especially for the financing part of it. You want to know you want to have the same picture that a lender's going to want. A lender's going to want to see, how effective your business is before they're going to lend to you. And, you're going to get better rates, better opportunities if you, start with an organized set of books.
Yep, I totally agree. So when you're, if to clarify that, when your business stops becoming a hobby, that's really about a level of consistency. It could be one deal a month, one rehab a month,
Right.
two rehabs a quarter, where you're just consistently doing business, not when you're hustling to get a deal or two, but when you start to gain consistency in your business is really that transition point where you go from being a hobbyist to I'm taking this very seriously. I have predictability in what I'm doing and I'm consistent with it. And that that happens for a lot of people in their first year in real estate. It really does. And some people it's their second or third year, but by and large it's, real estate's not that complicated to get into. And and start doing some deals. Now, getting it perfectly optimized and where it's heavily profitable, that's what
Yeah.
separates the pros from the amateurs. It really does.
And let's face it, in real estate, mistakes and problems, they start at $10,000 and go up from there, right? We're moving a lot of money around, and the expenses that we're encountering is large. They are large. So to be able to spot mistakes, or to be able to have a firm grip on how your business is doing, the efficiencies and the savings and the problems that you do not encounter are well worth the cost of hiring a good bookkeeping solution. Someone that's going to give you that vision is going to save you so much headache, so many problems. You're going to spot things before they happen.
Yeah, totally agree. It's critical. We just did an event called Scale Summit, where Andy was on talking about his business. Andy McFarlane, who we often refer to as the Rabbit. He's been doing this business for 20 years.
Yeah.
He said something funny to me, Will, you'll appreciate. He goes, yeah, we really scaled back. We're only doing about 100 to 120 deals a year. And that's his like vacation
Yeah.
life, scaled back life. But he's done over 100 deals a year since 2013 every year.
Yes.
And some years he's done 250. But the first person he really hired was his bookkeeper.
Yeah.
So
Right.
if that tells you anything from a business that's been around for 2 decades, doing it in a meaningful way consistently,
Yeah.
part of it's because he makes really good decisions because he has accuracy and good data in his numbers. So, hey, let's pivot a little bit because
Sure.
I want to ask a few questions. You guys have unique insights to data across multiple company. What trends do you guys see in profitable versus unprofitable real estate businesses?
Okay, so I would first say that marketing and consistency, because you know, if I have to group the profitable and the um, businesses which are not making a lot of money, so one consistent metrics is what I see is they consistently spend on marketing. uh, Even if that's not growing, the money they spend on marketing, it's not increasing, it's at least consistent, right? And that reflects, even when you look at the quarterly report, like, there's marketing spend. And the moment I see any businesses cutting down on our marketing or operations and all, I see a clear trend that their net profit and gross profit goes down. That's the first indicator. When I do the books, I see a growing business versus uh, stagnant business, I would say. And it almost it's true like almost 90% of the time. So when I see when I'm as a bookkeeper, when I see the marketing budget goes down, and the profit goes down as well. Yeah, that's
Well,
one thing.
it's funny you say that, Sam. From a bookkeeper's perspective
Yes.
too, we had Sharad from who owns a CRM. He sees a lot of data, a lot of real estate investor data, and I mean that's what he talked about. Like the companies who are doing 20 deals a month are consistently spending on the same marketing channels. They're not jumping around for marketing channels. They're not yo-yoing their marketing budget. They're consistently spending money on marketing over long periods of time, and that's what's allowed them to grow their business. So that's a CRM company saying it. This is a bookkeeping company saying it.
Yeah,
From the
because
data perspective on the numbers, it's really fascinating to hear that. Hey, what's just to kind of, because I want to talk about what Auxley's. You guys have some really exciting stuff coming up in the business and services you offer to people. But what's the one number every investor should know off the top of their head, and why?
I would say their burn rate, personally. Sam might say something different. I personally think that knowing your burn rate will help you balance your finances. We've all woken up at 2 a.m. in the morning, scared that we're going to run out of money. And, being able to know what money is yours, what money's spoken for, what money's profit.
Can you define burn rate for people? Because there's two concepts. One's called a burn rate, one's called a run rate. But let's just go into burn rate. What's a burn rate for somebody who might not know?
I'm gonna say my definition of this. Sam might say something a little different, but my definition is, the money you need week in, week out, month in, month out, in between deals. Right? We know at the end of a deal, we're going to have money coming into our business. But what do you need to sustain you before that happens? Right? What do you need to set aside, before that happens? Because we've all overspent that, right? If we knew that number, if we knew our business, say, has a burn rate of $10,000 a month, and we have a deal that's not going to come off the books for the next 4 months, there's $40,000 in overhead that you need to consider is not available to spend because you're going to need it for your overhead. That's my definition.
So basically, that's the cost to keep the lights on of the business
Exactly
month
right.
over month, right? Like the consistent spend that you have to spend to keep the business running.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, the one I have a different opinion on the numbers. Usually, like again, working with so many businesses and and looking at so many books and numbers. I've been on marketing seat for 7 years and all. So for me, the one number every business owner should know is what's their profit margin, right? So for example, again, there is businesses, you can look at any businesses in two types. Like you can look at from a cash flow perspective, which is generating cash, or you can look at equity perspective. But for me, like you do all the work throughout the year, you put millions and you do all the work and all. At the end of the year, what's your profit margin of your business? Like, are you at 5%, 7%, or you're making none? Are you even making your average wage after paying everyone? So I think that number is important because it makes sense to see if you need to continue and put more effort into it to grow. Because if you have spent your 300,000 or $1 million in running a business, you rather put it in a different market or something. If you get like easy man like 5% or 10% with the market, and you put that $1 million, do all these things, set up overheads and all that, and if you're not even making uh, uh, the minimum profit margin, so that's something they need to work on. So they need to know what the business is making in terms of profit margin per year.
Sam, you keep my books. What's my current profit margin in 2025? You know?
Yeah, I know, but do you want to announce it publicly? I don't think you'd like.
You can tell me. You can say it publicly on this podcast.
I think I need to look into the books and get the numbers.
All right, you look that up, and then you can tell us at the end what my profit margin is, so that I'm armed with the right data.
Sure, I'll do
2025. What do you see?
Yeah, 2025 is just like one quarter.
Yeah, it's just so far. What do you see?
Sure, I'll tell you.
And, an important point that Sam touched upon, we do make profits. We also, as a flipping, with flipping businesses and real estate investment companies, we also get paid in terms of equity as well. I remember, when I first started at, in 7FF, I was so focused on my profit. What profit did I make? What profit did I make? And then, I then started looking on, well, how much equity can I keep, right? And when you look at it from that point of view, your business model, at least ours, went from maximizing profits to maximizing our assets. and so our profits would be reduced, but our equity, exploded once we started focusing on that.
Well, that is so timely. We've been talking about this in seven figure flipping for the past 12 to 18 months, where
Mhm.
we had kind of realized that, we're as good coaches pushing people to be the best version of themselves, to grow their company, to hit those big numbers that they said they wanted to hit. And for years, we kind of neglected talking about assets and buying assets and building legacy wealth, because we were also hyper focused on competing to grow to 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 5
Right.
million. And over the past 12 to 18 months, we've talked a lot more about active income, passive or semi-passive income, and just fundamentally investing. You have to make active money, but what you do with the active money is you go put it into assets. And what's really cool about us as real estate investors is we are uniquely positioned to do that in a meaningful way.
Yes.
Yet you've got house flippers who flipped a zillion houses but own no properties. And
Right.
we're starting to see, we've got a lot of investors in the community now who own 30, 50, some of them, we got a guy who owns 1,300 houses in the community. And that's legacy wealth right there.
Yes.
So yeah, I agree with you. There's a point in which the equity also is really important. That's how wealth is made. It's not going to be, you can make there. Think about the athlete. You go to the NFL, you make hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. Very few make tons of money, but just regular NFL players will make, $500 to $1 million in their 3-year career. And most of them are leaving broke.
Yeah.
And making active income is only one part of the equation.
Yeah.
Investing your money, keeping your expenses at bay, is just fundamentally, whether you do real estate or not, how you build wealth. So we talk about that a lot now. It's really big in the community. We've got a lot of people buying rentals, investing in apartments, and I mean, even people, who are putting money into their stock accounts, which is also fine.
Right.
It's just a place to grow your wealth, invest the difference between your income and your expenses. But of course, like, making active income is important. Like, the more money you can make, the more you can invest. That's the way you should be looking at it.
Well, one observation I would I find is really instructive is, having sort of a broad vision of a lot of different businesses. People who find a way to hang on to assets, their net worth improves the most. That's what we see. If you find a way to hang on to assets. The other thing I'll say is, I've talked with a lot of successful investors, and a common refrain that I hear is, I wish I would have kept more, right? I wish I would have kept more properties. If you do, one day you just wake up wealthy. I mean, it just seems, it's not that easy, of course, but that's the result.
Yeah, that is the result.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I love it. Okay, Sam, do you have my 2025 profit margin yet?
I'm logging into QuickBooks. I wasn't prepared for
man.
that. Let's just keep talking and I'll get it to you in like a few minutes.
All right. While
So see,
Sam's
again, that's a good thing because, I was prepared for the podcast today, and the way our system is set up is so secure that you need all the authentications to log into the books. We intentionally made it that way so that, it's in terms of data security. So if I have to log into the books, I need to switch from podcast to, the bookkeeper mode where I need access to the servers. So I'm just requesting the code to log in. It might take a few minutes.
Okay, cool. So, Will, I want to talk about, so Auxley's doing you have bookkeeping services. You guys have a ton of talented people, CPAs, all kinds of like insanely smart people on your team at Auxley. And you do service a lot of real estate investors, which makes you powerful. Because like going out and getting just any bookkeeper, if you're a house flipper and you go hire a normal bookkeeper off the streets who doesn't know house flipping, that's going to be a dumpster fire. Like you have to know that kind of asset
Yeah.
because it is a little bit complex.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you guys are doing a lot of that, and you guys are tailor made for real estate investors and other industries,
Mm-hmm.
of course. What else do you guys have coming up in 2025 from a services perspective that you're looking forward to this year?
Yeah, so we've, in starting in Q3 of 2024, we began offering operations support. So, we have really great connection with different project engineers that were able to help businesses with their back end support. I'll just give you one example. One of our partners is a construction company, and so, like most business owners, they're out there getting business. They're putting out fires. They're doing everything day to day. So they often don't have time to come in with people, processes, and technology. Right. That sort of operations support is often lacking. So we have project coordinators that, for example, help them organize their business through their work management system. And with this particular client, they use Builder Trend. So, there's all kinds of software solutions available, but a lot of times we don't use them to their maximum capability. Well, our people are experts at these work management systems. We also help them build their procedures, their policies, their guidance documents, checklists, things that you need to optimize and streamline your operations. And that's very exciting because that's really, really making a difference with some of our businesses.
That is super powerful, especially as you start to scale.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that goes into business, from
Mm-hmm.
documentation to processes and all that stuff. That's so you already have the talented back end that people can just tap into,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have to go out and worry about management and hiring the right person and then letting go of the right person. That's
Right.
really really impactful.
Yeah,
for a lot of
help bring in the infrastructure because a lot of times they don't have the bandwidth. We know we have to do it. We know we should be systemizing our business. We know we should be a systems-based organization. It's a lot of work. So we give them a little bit of relief on that, and it really makes a difference. Just to tag back on what we were talking about in bookkeeping, mistakes in these types of businesses come with a minimum of a $10,000 price tag. So in your operations, it's the same thing. If you miss something because you're not organized, the price is pretty heavy.
Yeah, it's oh man. Mistakes are certainly costly in this industry. Okay, let's go back to Sam. Sam, what did you discover?
So you're nailing it down in 2025. Your profit margin is about 40%. That's net profit margin.
Net profit margin 40%. So what's the average? What do we see on what's the typical average?
So far this is just for Q 2023. So the net for the all 3 months is 40%. So month on, if you want to do, just divide 40 by 3. That's your average profit margin per month, 13%.
Yeah, I mean, what's the average? What's like a healthy profit margin for a wholesaling or flipping company typically?
What do we see?
20%, 25%?
I think that depends. I think anything about 20 is good.
Yeah, so that's just a good aim point for people to do that math and go, am I hitting 20% profit margin? A little backstory for you guys is when we did our annual planning, Lindsay and I, this past year for Blackjack, it was literally, our theme is nothing but net. I don't care how many deals we do. I don't care anything but what our net margin is. That's it. That's our only focus this year, is on net margin. And what's crazy is that, like, our net margin sucked last year. I don't even want you to say it, Sam, because it's probably going to embarrass me. but it wasn't good, which is what caused it was so painful that Lindsay and I were like, dude, we got to do something different.
Mhm.
Cost of contract was getting expensive. I was having to spend more money on marketing to get a contract, all these things. So we made some small pivots, and what you measure grows. So when we started focusing on net margin, we were able to bring our net margin up because that's all we have focused on. So I think if you don't have the right data, if you don't have the right bookkeeper, it's going to be hard for you to do that. So you definitely need to do that. Okay, so if people want to come and they're like, I have no idea how to do QuickBooks, or my Excel sheets are getting unwieldy, how can they reach out to you guys? Like, is there Auxley.com? I'll put the link in the comments, but what's the best way to reach you guys?
Yeah, so through our website, of course, we have a contact form, and any of your viewers are welcome to contact us directly.
I think the
William.
another thing is email might be the best way. It's admin@auxilee.com, AUXILEE.com, admin@auxilee.com.
Yeah, and even if you already have a bookkeeping service or you're keeping your own books, it's worth reaching out to them to have them maybe do an audit on what you're doing, seeing how they can give you some feedback or potentially how they might do it for you. So I highly, highly, highly recommend. Like I said, Sam does my books. That's why I could pull my books up. Their team does my books, obviously Ramsha mostly, and then they also do our title company, our Titan Title. We own a title company. They do our title company books because they do such a great job. And it's my honor to have you guys on today. I love what you're doing. I think the operational stuff you're going to help people with is going to be massively impactful. So just a sincere thank you to both of you guys for coming on today.
Thanks, Adam. It's a pleasure. Hey, for the audience who's listening, I just wanted to give a few benchmarks, just like profit margin, if you allow me to do that,
Yeah,
so that
please.
it might be helpful for them. So usually the net profit margin industry benchmark, again, I work with, as of today, I work with like 115 companies. So minimum 15% to 30% is good. This is the net profit margin. And keep the operating expense ratio. The lower, the better. It should be 30 to 50%, right? And the cost of goods sold, especially for flipping company, should be 25% to 50% max, but the lower the better. If it's below 25%, that's great. And again, advertisement and marketing ratio, expense ratio. So again, it depends on your KPIs as well, what return it's giving, but the minimum you should spend at least 5 to 10% of it on advertisement and marketing, right? Expense ratio based on the income it is generated, the gross income. Contractor expense ratio, I see 20 to 35%. The lower, the better. And payroll expense ratio 15 to 30% is the benchmark. Again, the lower the better. If when I give you a range 15 to 30, you can just decide if you're on the lower end, you're good, or below the 15, really good. But if you're hitting 30, you need to look into the numbers and see,
If
make some
if you
adjustments.
say a ratio that starts with expense, I'm going to just go ahead and say the lower the better.
Yes.
That's true. That's
If
true.
you're spending money, the least money I can spend to make the most money is, in fact, the goal. So, no, that's great. That's great, Sam. Thanks for sharing that. And thank you guys for coming on. I
Absolutely.
think if anybody needs bookkeeping, if you're flipping houses, if you're wholesaling houses, or if you have a services business, HVAC or roofing, these guys are pros. They do take care of your books. You should definitely reach out to them. Check the link in the comments. Thanks for tuning in. Do me a favor, go to the review section and leave me a 5-star review. If you don't think the service was good on this podcast, you didn't like the information, you can email Oxley and tell him that it was bad. We don't want to hear any of that. So just leave the 5-star review. Thanks, guys. See you on the next one.
All right. Thanks, guys.